welcome. This is a super important podcast about hair, question mark, featuring Ryan Teal and Steven Adams as your co-hosts. Let's begin.
Joe, no takes because we don't do takes.
Why would we?
That's probably how I'm actually going to start this, by the way.
Exactly.
So, hey guys, this is Ryan Teal, again, another super important podcast. And this time I'm with a really, really dear friend of mine, Joe Portinari, who is I'm not going to like tell a whole lot, but I got to meet him working for a manufacturer not too long ago, where he was the director of sales, and I was the director of education, and we became really good friends and toured around a little bit. But I just wanted to give a little bit of background. A really big, inspiration for me. The kid knows more about sales than most people, and it's not a bad sale. So, really, with that being said, why don't you tell them a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are right now, Joe?
Yeah, no, thanks, Ryan. And first off, I think, it's awesome to hook up again. So
yeah.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers, definitely. Yeah,
nice to see you.
This is water, by the way, and that's apple juice.
Yes. It's roughly 1 o'clock West Coast time and Sunday. So here we go. No, so yeah, how did I get started? Where did all this stuff happen?
Because you have a great story, man.
Well, it's a real story, and I think that's really, at the end of the day, what it's all about. Something that you always used to talk about, hairdressing, you didn't choose hairdressing chose you. Mm-hmm. Well, that comes true for me as well. I was born in this business. My father started with Paul Mitchell in 1984, working for his cousin, C.B. Sullivan, which was an amazing distributorship based out of New Hampshire, which obviously C.B. and the operation. And so as a young boy, I always saw what C.B. was doing, but from a different perspective, and he was very successful. And, people that grew up in, Suncook, New Hampshire, where I was from, you didn't really see that level of success very often, So I kind of saw it from the outside looking in, and there was a side of me that always said someday, maybe I can be like C.B. Sullivan. Who knows? And so at the end of the day, it was like my father was in the business. I didn't quite understand what that looked like, but I still have memories of being like 4 or 5 years old, riding around shotgun with my dad down Newbury Street, going in and out of salons, just like
detailing.
Yeah, it's kind of like what is this, right? To the 90s where I was, in a Farouk hair show when they were launching, semi-permanent funky colors.
Oh, wow.
So that was even happened back in the 90s,
nice.
Right?
Was that in Boston or Massachusetts?
That was actually in Massachusetts,
okay.
Yeah. So it was really interesting, and I never really understood what that was, And so at the time it was, Dennis Rodman's playing for the Bulls, and he's got funky hair, and all of a sudden I have funky hair, right? And
were you wearing skirts as well, like he was?
I wasn't wearing skirts, but I should have. Maybe that was I don't know what I did wrong, it was a cool time, and. Again, I never really quite understood what that was, but what it did for me long term was amazing, So anyways, I took a path like I think anybody would that, maybe wanted to blaze their own trail, and so I tried to go away from hair. And really that was because my whole family was in it, from my sister to my aunts to my grandmother to my uncles. Every one of my family members worked at C.B. Sullivan's. And then my dad's sister, who ended up marrying a gentleman named Craig Michio, him and his father ended up starting their own distributorship. And so now all of a sudden we had two family members that had, two different distributors, and they both had somewhat of a point of difference. CB had the storefronts and, this massive organization. He's doing,
massive,
$55 million a year, or $56 million a year since 1990 till he sold in roughly like 2009, 2010 or whatever it was. It was just unbelievable, And then here's this other spin-off that who would have ever thought they maybe would have grabbed traction, and they ended up getting some really great brands over the years, and now they're Evolved Salon Systems.
What was it originally called? I can't remember.
It was called Kaleidoscope.
Kaleidoscope,
and,
yeah.
And Gene Michio was the one who started that distributorship, who was actually my dad's first ever boss at CB's.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So his son, Craig Michio, marries my dad's sister, and they end up starting a business together, and then it evolves into this company called Evolve.
Oh, cool.
And, they run the New England marketplace. CB ended up selling to Salon Centric, and, the rest was history with all that. And my father was always in my ear saying, Joe, when are you gonna, come work in the business? And for me, I was snowboarding in Lake Tahoe, 100 days a year. I'm playing golf every day in the summer. I was really pursuing a lifestyle, and I was honestly at a crossroads in my life where it was like career or lifestyle. And like anything in life, I think when something gets thrown your way that kind of shakes up the norms in your system, right? That's when you end up maybe making a different decision, and that decision happened to be hair, which took me to Boston, Massachusetts.
And you became a rep at that point, if I remember. If I remember the story, because I haven't really actually sat and listened to your story. I've only ever heard snippets. But you were a rep or a DSC.
Yeah, no, exactly. So again, I didn't really know what that meant, right? And so my dad's in my ear, and he's like, Joe, you got to come join this company called Kaleidoscope. They got some really cool brands. And in my head, I'm like, why am I not joining Uncle CB? CB is the winner. He's the guy who's been dominating my whole life. Season tickets to the Red Sox, the Celtics, the Bruins. Constantly just giving back to our family and allowing all of us to reap the rewards of his success. And so, for me, it's like I want to work with him.
Yeah.
He's the one who's winning and kicking goals. And my dad's like, no, you don't understand. These guys have a different foothold, and the industry's changing. And I think like any young guy, you're like, Dad, what do you know?
Mm-hmm.
And thank God I listened to him. And really, the deal was, if you pay for my if you pay for my round trip ticket from Lake Tahoe, back to New Hampshire to meet with Craig and the boys, then I'll go have that meeting, right? And ended up meeting with Jerry, who ran sales. I never met this guy Jerry Hamill before, and he ended up becoming my boss, because he was running the sales division, and became a mentor of mine, and somebody that I can't even tell you how much this man's taught me. And and then you had Gene and Craig and a couple other guys over there, Gary Cody and Tyler Gadwa. I mean, these guys are top level dudes.
Yeah, I met most of them, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right, when we were at Jay Beverly, and and not to mention, I got my father, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, that took me back, and I became a rep in Boston, Massachusetts, bringing to market Kevin Murphy in the early days, and a brand called Euphora, and a couple other color lines out of Italy, and just some stuff that no one had ever heard of at the time.
And you became a beast. I mean, I've heard stories, not from you, but I heard that you, like some of the other people that evolved that really look up to you are like, Joe was a beast in Boston, and you actually were really good at flipping a couple of really difficult color accounts. That almost became kind of your thing.
Yeah.
But what happened? So you were a rep for or you were repping Euphora and Kevin Murphy. What happened after that? Because I mean, there is I'm trying to get you up to the Jay Beverly Hills where we pretty much met.
Yes. Yeah. Great question. So to your point, I had some success out on the road in Boston, and really the success happened because I was hungry, and it came from a place of I'm tired of starving in a sense. It's like you're getting paid on Thursday and you're broke on Friday. That's not a good feel when you're a 23-year-old guy that wants to go out and take a girl out on a date, right? You can't do that.
Yeah.
And you're living in an expensive city. I'm living with my dad at the time. Thank God he was looking out for me and giving me this opportunity. And something hit me, and it was really interesting. I was working with a manufacturer rep one day, and we were walking into an account. I was probably, maybe 3 weeks into the job, and I just saw the sole focus, right? And I saw someone walking in with a bag of products that was branded as one brand, and that brand happened to be Euphora. And I just thought in my head, I was like, wow, I think I like that a little bit better than having this multi-line portfolio, because for me, it's about being all in. That just always spoke to me. And the other side of it was, going back to the beginning, as I was telling you, I didn't want to ride off my family's coattails. I was very conscious of that. And I think growing up in the East Coast, that's something that, you're really mindful of as a very, very young person is that, you know, you don't want to use your family's name to your advantage. You actually want to blaze your own trail because you believe in yourself, right? And so that's where the manufacturing thing really came into play. It was single line focus, and it was one of those scenarios where it was like, I need to blaze my own trail. I need to show the world that, you know, Joe Portinari has what it takes too, and that's ultimately what got me fixated on that. You know, and I think to kind of add context of how did it happen, I just started putting myself out there, and someone told me a long time ago that permanent color is permanent business, you know, as far as a sales consultant is concerned. And you know, I made that my point to learn hair color, and I'm not a hairdresser. I don't know how to speak that language, and so it was a massive learning curve and a lot of sacrifices. But I figured if I'm the youngest guy out here, and I'm creating momentum in arguably one of the best markets in North America. And I'm building great customers, and I'm doing it with brands that no one's ever heard of, especially from a color perspective. And you know this as a salon owner. You know, maybe I can make a name for myself, you know, and I know it's going to take time, but if I continue to just tell people and put my face out there and say, I want more, right? And I ultimately want to be, you know, focused in the manufacturing arena. And someday I hope that maybe I could run a hair care company. Someone's going to finally give this young guy from Suncook, New Hampshire a break. And that's ultimately what happened. A gentleman by the name of Paul Austin, who was working with Juwan at J. Beverly Hills, phoned me one day and said, mate, what are you doing with hair color? And I said, you know, Paul, you got something special, and I believe in it, and my customers do too, and I'm just having fun placing it in salons. And he said, well, you know, Juwan wants you to fly out to Los Angeles and meet him. You know, he's looking to expand his sales division within the company.
And had you met Juwan before then?
Never.
Okay.
I had never met him. I'd seen the brand a little bit on the South Shore when I was in and out of a few accounts. And I always thought that it had a really beautiful logo. You know, to me it was timeless. You know. And when the product launched, there was a guy by the name of Max Eli who was heading up the color and one of the creators. And you know, they had said, hey, he's got this cool program, invite all your customers. He tells you about how great the color is and gives all the feature and benefits, shows some of the performance on some models. You know, and hairdressers seem to really, you know, like the way he communicates about color. So, you know, I really took somewhat of a leap of faith as a rep and said, you know, I'm going to trust this with blind faith. I really like this guy, Paul Austin. He's one of the best presenters I've ever met in my life, right? And in a sales meeting atmosphere. And so I gave it a crack. And, you know, Max ended up, you know, delivering an unbelievable program. I end up opening up a ton of hair salons with the color, and they start having a tremendous amount of success. And you know, I'm in a heavy Goldwell market where people don't switch, and I'm from the East Coast in New England where people don't like change, right? And ultimately that brought me to the brand. But no, I didn't know them. We had just launched with that product line maybe 5 months, 6 months. So it wasn't like we had the brand very long. And within the first 3 months, you know, I was doing $15K a month with J. Beverly Hills, this brand that no one's ever heard of. And, you know, 80% of that, Ryan, was hair color. Wow. Which was insane. And that's what brought me to the company.
Well, and that's tough to do. I mean, now that I'm working with distribution, having a brand new manufacturer in your portfolio at distribution and being able to write $15K a month that quickly, that says something for not only that brand, but also says something for you and as well as Max, really, being able to that you guys found a cool little niche. Yeah, you know, I think that's pretty rad.
Well, I think it's a few things. You know, one of the biggest things is desire, right? Purpose and focus. But more importantly, sometimes when you've never done something before, you get that feeling of, I don't know what I don't know.
Exactly.
And you create success. That's where the underdog mentality is so cool to me. And you know, now I look at my life now and I think of my latest opportunity, and I wasn't the underdog, and that was hard. It was really hard because I've always played that underdog. And I think when you live in that space of, you know you don't know, right? Sometimes good things happen if you're just a hard worker and you're focused. You know you're not going to cut corners. and you believe in honest business, right? And that's ultimately what happened. And and then I met great people like yourself, and like you said earlier in the beginning of this, we got to tour together, which was the first time I've ever done that with an artist. We kind of created that on the fly. It was just a very interesting concept. Like, who puts a sales guy and an artist on a stage, with a crowd of people, and all of a sudden we're creating this really interesting dynamic duo. And my whole goal was to really MC for you and open it up and kind of let you come in and do your thing. And I had never seen an artist that has your ability, and we talked about this last night a little bit when I ran into you. And for me, it's, you got artists who are technically amazing, right? And they do some unbelievable, hair, whether they're a colorist or they're, into styling and editorial, or whether they're hair cutters. But how many people can mesh that into being a great communicator? But more importantly, bringing it outside of hair and making it a little bit bigger. And that was something that I feel like happened between you and I that was organic, because that was a belief of mine as well.
Yeah, I remember sitting in hotels, and we would just sit and think of how we could actually make our presentations better. And I mean, those are some of the greatest times, really. I mean, there's that time in Kansas City at the sales meeting that we couldn't afford to stay at that horrible hotel in Blue Springs. I can't remember the name of that. It's the Courtyard Marriott.
Yeah.
And we had to stay down the hall, so we'd go and hang out with everybody in the at the sales meeting. And then we had to go off to to the cheap $100 night hotel. That was so fucking funny. I just said fucking on TV, not TV, but at the podcast.
We're uncensored here.
Totally. So we worked with at Jay Beverly Hills together for a while, and then I remember you came to me one day, and I was like, God, it was right after I broke both my knees too, and you came to me and you sat down, and you're like, I wanted to tell you before I tell anybody else, but you had another gig, and you went to, and you were crushing it now, by the way, and I told you not to come to my territory, but you're also crushing it in my territory as well. So what is your title now, and what are you working with?
So I knew probably about 6 months into my journey with Jay Beverly Hills that it wasn't going to be my last stop.
Yeah.
But it was going to be a very important stop. And, it really allowed me to grow as a human and stretch myself, and something I really believe in is there is no comfort zones. When you're really out there and you're after it, what is a comfort zone, right? And so when I started realizing that this wasn't going to be my last stop, my eyes were open. But I'm a brand builder, and I like stuff that's brand new, and I think that goes back to my Kaleidoscope and Evolve days. I mean, that's what these guys were. Put the hard hat on, roll the sleeves up, and make it happen. When I was in Boston, we had no business down there, and here comes this 23-year-old young kid talking to these icons, telling them, hey, you need to bring on this, you need to, do business with us, or whatever the case may be. So anyways, I had this affinity in this thing where it's someday I'm going to get my crack with something that has a clean slate. No one's ever heard of it. And, it's going to be something that's going to really, take off quickly. And that led me to these Australian guys who, I think there was maybe some of the early days of me working with a brand like Kevin Murphy, because Australia is a smaller country. They probably had maybe heard a little bit of me through friends of networks.
Of course, yeah.
Right, but ultimately I get this phone call and they're like, "Hey mate, I got your number. My name's Carlo Gattuso. I got this brand called 11 Australia," and I'm going, "Yup, I've seen it, I've heard of it." "What do you mean? How have you seen this? How have you heard of it?" I go, "I found you guys on Instagram 2 years ago." And I remember telling my old mentor, Paul Austin, saying, when this thing comes, I think it's going to be really big. I don't know who the people are behind this brand, but it looks really good. And I didn't even know pricing, I didn't know product performance, I didn't know none of that. It just had this feeling to me that felt very youthful, very fresh, and very young. And now all of a sudden I'm on the phone with one of the founders, right? And who happens to be the global CEO of the brand and who is now my boss, right? That's who I report to. And he goes, "I want you to spearhead this in North America, and you're going to be the leader of 11 Australia. And, you're going to take this to market and do a great job with it. I believe in you."
They said no one approved this.
Okay, so we had to, we were at, where were we? We were where was that place? What was that? There was the extra special area of the sports bet at the Westgate, and Joe was like, "Hey, let's go do it in there." And it was like closed to like anybody else supposed to be there. But we went ahead and snuck in, and then Bernie Mac shows up, with like ill-fitting pants, and like makes us leave. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, we're hurting a whole lot of people." And Joe's like, he's like, "Do I really need to? Ask for permission instead of ask for forgiveness?" So we got kicked out of sports bet at Westgate, and now we're at our favorite, or my favorite, I think probably your new favorite, Mexican food joint in Las Vegas, which is Lindo Michigan. It's a little noisy, but hey, get over it. So I wanted to, you were talking about, you coming to work with 11 Australia, but I do kind of want to take it in a completely different direction now. So,
Totally.
Where do you see the hairdressing industry like going? What is the future of the hairdressing industry, in your opinion?
Yeah, I love that question, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. And for me, I feel like it's one of the most opportunistic times, right? Like when I think about sales and when I got into this business, it always used to drive me nuts that people would try to move hairdressers through fear, right? Fear of Ulta, fear of diversion, fear of e-commerce, right? Like that was always like the tactic to say, oh, you should partner with me because I'm doing the opposite of what these people are doing. And really, when you really like break it down to its purest form, how strong really is that? Like how much, do you really have something that special if you have to like try to maybe take a shot at someone else to elevate yourself? And so that being said, where do I see the industry? I think we're in a great place. I mean, I'm watching so many people become successful, from the independent artist, the booth renter, the person who wants to open up their first ever commission salon, the seasoned salon that's reinventing themselves, startup brands.
A lot of startup brands right now.
Yeah, startup brands, scissor companies, appliances, like it's just wide open. And I really feel like right now the opportunity is with the progressive people that aren't afraid to change and do things new. And sometimes by doing things new, I feel like I think we have a birthday, a mariachi, a wedding, not sure. So meanwhile, while we got the music cranking, and by the way, this place is really cool. Anyways, so really for me, what it boils down to is just, it's not about having to be brand new. Sometimes it's about going backwards and finding out what works and putting a new school spin on it. Like, we're just seeing so much right now with like people that are getting inspired by the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. I mean, obviously the 90s.
90s,
right? It was massive. And to the point where now, like, I feel like Gen X is something that's starting to come back as well. This whole kind of like this whole movement away from, the establishment. And I think a lot of that plays into our industry. And I really feel like for the first time, the underdog has the advantage. And I love that.
So it's like almost like an even playing field, like probably with a lot of the Instagram like influencers and whatnot, that you don't have to be picked by a manufacturer. You can actually like almost build your own playing field, and they might actually come to you.
Well, it kind of lives by this whole mantra of create your own wave.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the other thing that I find interesting is, I would say even 3 years ago, people used to say, find your lane and stick to it. I don't know if that's true anymore. I mean, I'm watching some of the, like the owner of Off-White, for example. Like, this guy is in so many lanes, and he's doing it at such a high level. It's really fascinating. From collabs with Nike to collabs with Louis Vuitton, to being a DJ that's spinning world trending music, to a guy who's doing art installations, to partnering with IKEA and doing furniture. Like, how does it get any more of a broad spectrum of being a true creative? And when I look at somebody like that who's maybe a little more prolific at this point, I still think that that's happening in the hairdressing industry, and maybe on a little bit more of a micro level that can soon become macro. And for me, that's really cool. I love it. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, I dig that. So, if you, and I don't really want to take it to like the sales rep standpoint, because I really don't even look at you as a sales rep. I actually think of you as like somebody that really has their pulse when it comes to sales, and you know hairdressers very well because you've been around it for so long.
Yeah.
If you could give yourself, or not yourself, if you could give a hairdresser advice right now on maybe how to, even maybe a new hairdresser or somebody who maybe has been around for a while, and really you take it the way you want to take it. But if you can give somebody like advice on what you see the industry is going and where somebody should go, because I always ask you for advice, always. I'm always asking you to help me, navigate landmines. But if you can give somebody who's like maybe, you don't know necessarily, like what would a hairdresser could do to be more successful, like not tomorrow, but maybe get them on a path?
Fantastic question, and I think for me what it boils down to is be you, because that's what's special, right?
They should be me.
Yeah, they should be you. Exactly. Be Ryan Teal.
The greatest hairdresser of all time.
But on a serious note, and you do a good job at this, it's just really getting down to who you are as a person, right? And really what your lifestyle looks like. Like, wouldn't you agree that lifestyle is everything?
Uh-huh.
It's like, it's not just about hair, it's not just about your personal life, it's not just about your relationships or where you're traveling, or it's all of that. And it's like when you can start to harness all of that and get down to the purest form where you're no longer trying to impress anybody, right? You're just on your path and you're moving towards the goals and towards your purpose, things start to happen, and it will get lonely, because typically when you really find your true self and you're really out there trying to get after it, you're on your own, and that's the best place to be.
Oh yeah,
Because that's when you really find out what your talents are and what makes you special as a person, and I feel like that's what people want to vibe with, and eventually that creates this magnet. And I talk a lot about that with people, that I care about. It's like, create your magnet. And yes, does aesthetic play a role in that? 100% it does. And the thing that I love about aesthetic is most people that don't like fashion or struggle with fashion, with their aesthetic look, right? It's because they're feeling really uncomfortable doing something that they actually want to do. And I go through that struggle each and every day. I'm sure you've gone through that struggle. We all have, right? But I'll tell you, when you start to step out of that box and you start to say, you know what, I'm now going to carry myself the way that I believe, is the wave of the future. It's so refreshing, especially to the people that vibe with that. And that's the magnet. To me, that's the movement. And so, for the hairdressers listening out, to this this podcast that we're having here, it's really about being you and build a brand that is authentic, and that will create that magnet. Don't cut corners, don't try to be something that you're not. People can sense that nowadays.
Yeah.
Organic is everything.
Yeah,
Build something organically, and I promise you, people will vibe with that, and all of a sudden everything changes.
I love that. Okay, so last two questions, favorite two questions. Not favorite two questions, because I haven't answered them before. But I kind of feel like I would like to have it with other people. But you've always turned me on to like people you might be like listening to in like books on tape or reading books and stuff like that. Because I remember you told me once that you didn't want to, like when you first moved to LA, you didn't want to buy a TV. You just wanted to like listen to stuff and read stuff that's going to make you more successful.
100%.
What are you listening to or reading right now when it comes to like Seth Godin or any of those types of people that are like the success gurus? Who's your top three right now? Or what are you reading?
That is a fantastic question, and to be honest with you, it became a point in time where I'd say the last 2 years I've kind of pulled back from self-improvement books, and let me tell you why. For me, it was a lot of the same things that I was hearing over and over again, with someone else having their own take on it. And what I realized was I needed to go back to the very beginning. What truly got me to where I'm at? What was it that inspired me, and what was it that truly helped me? And anybody who knows me or who spent time with me, they all know that it comes down to one book, right? And it's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I mean, that to me that's where it starts, and that's because there's a system in it that makes sense.
A call to action, yeah.
And what it boils down to is there's a hidden message in the book, and the hidden message is know what you want. And I think there's so many people that are out there right now that truly don't know what they want. And once you figure that out, everything changes. Everything changes. So for me, it was going back to my roots and figuring out, like, what was it that made me successful when I was a sponge and I was living in this state of mind of, I know I don't know. Like I have no idea what's going on. I don't know what success looks like. Like I have no idea how to become something in this industry, and I followed this method and I followed it to a T, right? And it all of a sudden it started to work. So I've been going backwards.
Okay.
And I know
That's
that
cool.
maybe
No, I
that's
love
not
that.
what you're looking
Actually,
for, but I honestly I've gone backwards.
I actually love it because, you know, like I've been actually trying to go forward right now with self-help. Not self-help, but I mean, like you know, just be inspired by, like, you know, how to be more successful on, like, social media and whatnot. But it's actually funny because it all does come back to Napoleon Hill. I almost said Napoleon Dynamite. Okay, so last question. Top 10. I know you don't listen to bands necessarily.
Yeah.
But like your top 10 like go-tos when it comes to music right now.
Love it. So for me, you know, I was a 90s alternative rock like junkie, right? Like it's just like that was my thing, and I feel like rock kind of died in the 90s, unfortunately,
Yeah.
and I still vibe out with that, and it's always a phenomenal, you know, it just kind of brings you back to some stuff that resonated with you at that point in time. And then I kind of shifted gears into the, you know, late 90s hip hop scene, and, you know, East Coast hip hop was everything, you know, and then all of a sudden that went kind of south, right? So I ended up discovering, you know, house music when I was living in San Diego back in 2006 to 2008, and I haven't really gotten off that wave. And, you know, for me, I'm just a SoundCloud junkie.
Okay.
I mean, you know this.
Yeah.
And what's been really fun about SoundCloud opposed to some of the other musical platforms is it really has forced me to find out about music through my ear, opposed to looking up artists and finding out what their new, you know, drop is or what's the hottest, you know, record out. Like, it wasn't so much that. It was like just listening through these, you know, getting lost in SoundCloud and finding things that really like was resonating with me. And then all of a sudden I'm traveling to places like Copenhagen and London and whatever, and I'm hearing some of this music on at like these really cool venues, and I don't even know the name of the artist, but you know, if I was to break it down to a few artists that I think are doing a really nice job, I mean, for me, Eric Prydz, he's number one.
Okay.
I just think he's like, you know, he's done such a great job at always having that iconic Eric Prydz sound, even though his music can be very like uplifting and really happy, and at the same time can be very dark and heavy, but he always has this melody to his music, and I love the guy. You know, and then I would say Camel Fat. I mean, as a new, you know, DJ on the upswing. I mean, they've just done a phenomenal job, and also along with Ben Bomber. I mean, he's just been a beast out of Germany. So those are a couple of the guys that I've been vibing with. But yeah, I'd say when I go back to my like just go-to, it's always Prydz. Yeah, I like Prydz.
That's cool.
He's just a great guy.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I guess we're at like, you know, probably a little bit over 30 minutes now, and that's as long as I really like to do, because most of us don't have enough attention span to really watch much more than 30 minutes. So, dude,
Man,
it's always a
thank
pleasure
you
to
so
talk
much.
to you. Yeah,
It was a
definitely.
blast.
Talk to you guys later.
Peace.
Thank you so much again for listening